Hey everyone, week 6 of 3D Basics. Today we are going to look at assignment 3 a little bit. We'll look at the spooky tree assignment, and then we'll talk about particles a little bit. Particles is kind of like a little bonus thing. It's a little bit more of an advanced 3D thing, but it's kind of fun, and it's good to just kind of see how it works. But before we do both of those things, we have a listener request. Zhu had a question during our Zoom last week about editing the primitive meshes, like basic properties, after we've already kind of edited them a little bit. So I have a quick little thing to show related to that. That you may find useful. But it, of course, comes with a Nolan teaching moment. I don't know what you call it. All right, let's go to Blender. So Zhu had, as part of her assignment, she was making a motorcycle, and there was a wheel, and then like one of these like mud guard, I don't even know what you'd call it, things over it. And the question was, shade smooth these things. Once you create one of these basic meshes and you've started editing it, like this one I've cut in half basically, how would we change like the radius of things like this after we've already done it? So like, remember, if you were to add a torus, Shift A, of course, forgot this. If you were to add a torus, Shift A, add a torus like this, we have this add torus menu that pops up. And so, we can change these minor segments, these major segments, etc. You can change the major radius and minor radius, things like that. But this is something that's maybe a little bit unique to Blender. There are other 3D programs that let you adjust these things after. But basically, once you click off, it's set. Those are the starting radiuses and segments and things like that. Now, let me move this over here. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't change that. I can go edit mode, tab, right click, subdivide, and now I have double the number of segments. Although, a keen observer would understand that it's not actually rounding these. It's just subdividing them. But still, there's more. Or, we could scale it, this way, or scale it the other way. But we can't actually change, the radius. And torus is like the main example that this comes up in. So here, let me delete this. So here, this is the example. So Zhu wanted to had this little like mud guard here, and she wanted it to be bigger, like the opening to be bigger. And it's like, okay, well, if I scale X, like it's going to go like this, but then if I try to like scale Z, it's going to throw this off a little bit. So like, how do we do that quickly? Like, especially if there's like, if I've already modeled a lot of details and things like that, how would I change this, the width of the donut, the width of the torus? And my official answer is you just make a new one. That like, if you weren't satisfied with this, it's probably easier to just go Shift A, add a new torus. If I can find it, torus, rotate the Y90, and just get this right. Get it the right size that you want it to be. Because really, once you are practiced in kind of doing things like this will take you 30 seconds to redo, which in the grand scheme of your project is hopefully not that much time. And then go back in here. So get the radius right, do your x-ray so you can kind of see where it is. And then you can get into edit mode and you can, go to your orthographic and you can start deleting faces and whatnot. Now, that's how I'm recommending you do it for two reasons. This being able to put things in your scene like this accurately and kind of thinking ahead to what the scale of things that you want to be is a skill and something that you'll get better at. And so you will be starting things over in this class in 3D and forever. Like you'll just have to sometimes because it doesn't work. And B, it's also good practice to start with simpler shapes, blocking out your scene, getting the big pieces in place, and then adding the detail, and then getting smaller and closer and subdividing and things like that. So that's another process thing that's important too, is starting with simpler shapes, less geometry, and then adding in the detail later. So I would, if you were adding in a torus, whoops, let me go back to object mode. If you're adding in a torus and you're like, well, I want it to look really smooth, so I want minor segments to be 97 and I want it to be 74 like this. Wow, yeah, great. Shade smooth. But now like it's too much to begin with. And we'll talk later about like actual numbers, like what's a good number of polygons to have. And there's not a right answer, but we'll analyze good and bad numbers of polygons. Okay, what I'm beating around the bush here. Delete this. Now there is a way to do what Zhufei asked without starting over. And there is a function in Blender. If I go tab into edit mode and I hit A to select all, here we have in the mesh menu, we're in edit mode. We can go to mesh, we can go to transform, and you have a shrink and fatten tool. It's a shrink, fatten, selected vertices along normals. So if we click this and move my mouse, you can see that we can shrink or fatten this along its normals. And just a reminder, and actually I don't know if we've covered this. You've maybe heard the term normal. But let's explain that real quick. So hold on. No, before I get into the weeds with normals. So this is a way to achieve that. So Alt S was the keyboard shortcut, shrink and fatten. But this isn't always going to work, because if you have like other details and things, it can get messy. So for example, if I go back in object mode, let me Shift A, add a Suzanne, add a monkey, G like this, tab into edit mode. You also have to have all selected. So A to select all faces, and then Alt S. So you can see that it like with things that are like have any other like amount of detail, it gets messy, and it's because it's doing it along the normals. All right, now let's very quickly talk about what a normal is. Let's open up Paint. Oh god, white screens. Oh, whew, okay. I'm one of those people that always does things in dark mode. Okay, let's. How do I do this? Let's get a brush. I want color too. Okay, so imagine. How do I do this? How do I draw? Brush, color one. There we go. Okay. So imagine this is a polygon, and we're kind of looking at it from the side. The normal of a polygon is in the direction perpendicular to this flat surface. So it's, the normal is like this. So if we were looking at, if we took this polygon, I'm pointing at the screen. If we took this polygon and looked at it exactly on the side like this. So we're looking straight along the edge of the polygon, and it's totally flat. The normal is 90 degrees perpendicular in this direction. So that's what a normal is. In 3D, normal, normal also means this, that like, so when we shrink and fatten along normals, it's moving it, straight along this axis, directly out from your polygon. But it's also something that is important because it signals inside versus outside. So like when we look at, let's go back into Blender. So like looking at the inside of our little mud flap here. So like obviously if I selected this polygon, I can see it on both sides. So like this is the outside, this is the inside. So the normal of this is pointing, in this direction. So like there are ways to flip the normals. So, and sometimes you need to. So like it's somewhere in here, it's somewhere in the menu. There's like normals here, like normals flip or recalculate outside. So like this is what normal means. The outside, which side of a polygon is the outside, and the like direction that it points is the normal. So there's lots of calculations that can be done with normals. But anyway, okay, that's our listener request for the day. Shrink and fatten is the thing that exists if you need to recalculate a torus. Okay, let's go new, general. Don't save. Okay, how we doing on assignment 3, the spooky tree? I want you to try it on your own. So if you haven't started yet, if you haven't started your spooky tree, try to start on your own first. Pause the video. You can come back to this later. Try it on your own first. See how it goes. And then come back and see how I do it. Okay, if you paused, welcome back. Oh, I think I'm funny, but I'm just like I'm in a room by myself, just talking to nobody, laughing at my own stupid jokes. You know what? Maybe I shouldn't have deleted that tree. Control Z. Tree? Cube. Let's rename this cube tree. This is how I would start. So some of you might think, well, like if I'm looking at my primitive shapes here, a cylinder maybe makes sense because, tree trunk is cylindrical usually. It's not a bad place to start, but again, like going back to a point I made earlier, that I try to start with like the simplest shapes possible because I can always add in detail later. Okay, so let's just go for it. So I'm gonna shift A. I want to add I'll add like my ground at the end. So tab edit mode. I'm gonna S shift Z, scale it in like this, just make it a little narrower. I also want to, just because I'm kind of weird, I'm gonna GZ move this so it's like pretty close to the to like 0 on the bottom here. All right, and then 3 for face select, and I'm gonna E extrude out like this. Cool. And you know what? Maybe I'll GZ move this down, and maybe I'll just kind of E extrude like a little bit like this. And maybe what I'll do is I'll turn on my soft selection. I'll like get this bottom. I'll hit 2 for edge select, and I'll alt click this bottom loop here. Or maybe I'll just X-ray select there like this. And I got my soft selection on, so maybe I'll scale out like this, make this a little bigger. I don't want it to be like that. I want my fall off to be, I don't know. That's fine. That's a good place to start. And maybe I pull up a reference image. Maybe I just Google spooky tree. Just to get an idea. I don't know. Something like this. Maybe I'll just kind of keep this open in another window. I don't think I'm going to have this many branches. All right. Let's see. So maybe I'll go 3 for face select, and maybe I'll like E extrude a branch out of here. Maybe S. Whoops. I'll turn off proportional editing. Maybe I'll kind of just scale this down a little bit. Maybe I'll go 2 for edge select, and maybe I'll EE. Whoops, no, GG, slide that. Not EE. Undo. Select this one, GG, slide this one. Oh, can I slide it up? Maybe I'll just G move it up myself like this. Okay. So I'm just kind of working on this branch right here. You know, I'll E out here and just kind of G move it this way a little bit, scale it down, just so it's getting a little smaller. Maybe I'll have like another little branch come out of here, so I'll do Control R for a loop cut and just kind of add on right here. 3 for face select. Let's go back to or turn off X-ray select like this, because it's probably a little easier. E extrude this one out, S scale. Maybe kind of G move it up. We'll do one more segment on each of these. E extrude again, S scale it down again, just so it keeps getting a little smaller, and then G kind of move it up here. And then maybe I'll E, whoops. Undo, I think I E extrude, S scale it down, and maybe I'll G move that up like this, so it's kind of coming up. Cool. Yeah, I want this to be like a little higher, so maybe I'll do X-ray select. I'll go 1 for vertex, grab all of these here, and just kind of G move it up like this. Maybe R rotate a little bit. I don't know. I'm just kind of going by feel here a little bit. I'm not going to add a ton of detail to mine just because I don't want to take up too much time. All right. Let me do Control R. Let me add another loop cut over here, maybe. And why don't I 3 face select this one? Whoops, let's turn off X-ray. What is the keyboard shortcut? Alt-Z turns off the X-ray. Not Control-Z, shoot. Alt-Z. Oh yeah, that turns, I was playing Cyberpunk earlier. It was on sale. I'd never played it before. So I just got to do it like this. 3 for face select here. Let's E extrude here, S scale that down. Let's G kind of move it up here maybe. Maybe this part just has one segment. I'll E extrude one more time and S scale it down, G move it up here. It's feeling like a little bit too uniform in the middle here, so let's take this top one and like G a little bit like this and rotate it like that, so it's kind of twisted a little bit. I'll E extrude. Oh, we probably won't add too much more. It's going to be a pretty barren tree. I also want to take, yeah, I feel okay about this. Let me Control R, add a loop cut. Here, actually I'll middle mouse wheel up. No, too late to do that. I'll let Control R, add another loop cut there. Perfect. Because I want to get a piece out of here. 3 for face select, E extrude here, S scale it down, I'll G move it over here. And then maybe E extrude one more time. Oh, that's too long. Let's scale that down. And maybe one has to come out of here too. Control R. I'm going to do 2 like that. No, I only want 1. Can undo that. Control R to loop cut. Click once there. Control R again. I'll just add one right there. I'll go 3 for face select. E extrude this one out. S scale that down. I'll move it back in a little bit. E extrude one more time. G move it up here like this. Maybe rotate so it's not so goofy. Okay. So we come out of here one more. E extrude, S scale, G. I don't know. What do you think? Is it spooky enough? It's a little. This part looks. This top branch is a little too long. Let me select that face and just kind of slide it back in a little bit, so it's not so awkward. And maybe this isn't like, very accurate to nature how trees would actually grow, but I'm feeling okay about this. I'm going to move this a little bit. I feel like if things kind of come back on themselves a little bit, it's awkward. And also I'm realizing that like this branch and this branch are like mirrors of each other. So maybe maybe what I should do is I should grab all of these and just like do my top down view and R rotate it this way a little bit. There we go. That way it's adding a little bit of variety. Okay, okay, one more thing. Let's control R. Let's add a loop cut down here. And maybe I'll just grab this one here and I'll extrude out of this and S scale that and G move it over there and E extrude again and S scale it and G move it up here. Yeah, once again, too far. One for vertex select. Let me just slide these in. It's getting stretched out a little bit too much. I want it to still be kind of realistic. Okay. And like my base is a little goofy, so I'm just going to kind of move, turn off X-ray select. I want it to be like a little bit fatter here. I'm going to kind of adjust a couple of these points. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. It's basic. It's a like basic spooky dead tree. I think I'll leave it there. Okay. So part of the requirements for this were we wanted to do some sculpting as well. Now there's a couple ways we can fix this up to make it easier to sculpt. So for example, right now, if I wanted to sculpt, I went into the sculpting view here, and I tried to add stuff like this, it's only moving it's only moving them a little bit. Undo, 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 undo. Okay. And that's because we don't have, there's not a lot of geometry in here. In fact, we can look at our geometry if we open, let's see, which one is it? Is it this one? Here we go. This little overlays thing. If you twirl this open, there's a little checkbox here that's statistics, just to show you how many faces we have. 102 faces, which equals 204 triangles, which is a small number for a 3D model, no doubt. If you find, a lot of times if you're looking for free 3D models on the internet, there'll be a polygon count. It's usually somewhere in the like 5,000 to 50,000 range. So 100 is a small number. So there's a couple ways we can take it from here. Now, one thing I'm going to do that I always forget is I'm going to save my project. Spring 2022. This is going to be my spooky tree. Double click. Spooky tree. Save Blender file, please. A couple things we can do. So we need to add geometry. So right now we're at 102. Let me also just add let me add a ground plane here. Call this ground. My preferred method is a subdivision surface modifier. So if I click on the tree, there's a couple ways I can do it. I can go to my modifier properties tab here, the little blue wrench. In Britain, they call it a spanner. I can hit add modifier, and it's right behind my camera here, subdivision surface. And it makes it a little bit more rounded. Okay, that's fine. But it's like too rounded here at this point. Also, just a reminder, I undid that. So keyboard shortcut to add a subsurface modifier is, for me, Control 1 on the top row numbers, or Control 2 for 2 levels, Control 3 for 3 levels. Control 2 is fine. Now, so remember, there are tricks to manipulating a subdivision surface modifier. The main thing here would be adding creases. So remember how we did that before. So like, for example, on a tree, let's take this part, for example. This is not how branches branch on a tree. This looks like a web. So one thing that we can attempt to do is to add a crease. Remember, that's one thing we can do with the subdivision surface modifier is mark edges as creases and adjust kind of how creased they are. So like imagine folding a piece of paper that like a piece of paper is really smooth, but you can slowly start to add more and more of a crease until you can flatten it down and it's a corner by creasing it. So let's try to do that here. I'm not sure it'll work. So let's go tab into edit mode, and we might need to turn on X-ray so we can kind of see what we're doing. But let's take we got to find, it doesn't have to be a loop. So if we just edge crease this one edge right here, kind of where they meet, with Shift E, so you can either right click edge crease here, or you can Shift E. And as I move my mouse, you can see it kind of sucks in that corner. But then it's still, it doesn't look like it worked. So it kind of sucked it in, but we can see that it's a little messy here with this. So I'm going to undo that. The other thing we can attempt to do, I'm going to turn on my X-ray again, is kind of get this loop cut. So I'm holding down my Shift key, or not loop cut, but loop selection, holding down my Shift key and selecting this whole loop. And then we can do the same thing, Shift E, try to edge crease like this, and then click. And that's a little better. And maybe from here, we can work with this a little bit. So maybe like I take this one and I Shift E, and can I undo it a little bit? Did it sort of, oh yeah, so maybe actually what I do is I take this bottom one and I Shift E and I bring this one out a little bit like this. Yeah, that actually kind of worked. And then what I'd probably do is I'd take this edge and just G, kind of move it in. Yeah, so we're getting there a little bit. Just because, like it branches off, and there's kind of a sharper corner here. So that's one way to do it. The other way that you can manipulate, and this is maybe kind of the old school way of manipulating a subsurface modifier, is just by adding loop cuts. So for example, on the base here, I could add a loop cut like this. If I do Control R and I click here and I add a loop cut and just kind of bring it down to the bottom, it's pretty much making it rounded like we want it to. It's kind of the same thing as adding an edge crease, but that's maybe just an old bad habit of mine. So maybe I should just select these edges, not that one. Select all the edges on the bottom, Shift E, make an edge crease like this, just so it's rounded. Sure. Okay. There's the base. And so, we can go down the line if we really wanted to, cause like here, yeah, like this is not a very realistic, situation here. So maybe let's select these edges. I'm going to turn on X-ray again. I'm going to go around here. Whoops, not that one. Undo. I want this just kind of square here. This one, this one, this one, this one. And we can Shift E, add an edge crease like that. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, better for sure. And then like here, maybe. Here's another good spot. We grab this one, this one, this one, this one. So, oops, we're not, it got out of hand. Here, make sure I'm selecting the right edges. Shift E, adding it in here, but then I'm going to take this bottom one maybe Shift E and kind of adjust it so it's not quite as sharp. And then, you know, maybe I go 1 for vertex select and I grab all of these and this. And I kind of just G move it up a little bit and R rotate it, just so it's like a little bit more realistic. I feel like I had things at too hard of angles. Okay, this isn't perfect, but I'm gonna call it okay for now, just because I want to move on to like some of the sculpting stuff. So, we wanted more geometry to do sculpting. I added a subdivision surface modifier, and it has indeed added some geometry, but there are places where it's still imperfect. So good topology in 3D would mean having pretty evenly sized polygons. So if I go edit, well, I guess not necessarily. So like looking at my model here, there are places where the polygons are much smaller. So like look at this one, for example. Like this is, you know, a rectangle, pretty moderately sized, but compared to like some of these ones down here, like these ones are much larger and much longer. So we kind of want to have a pretty even distribution of your polygons. And I think it was James, somebody brought up re-topology. And this is a concept that can definitely come into play when sculpting. So real quick, what I could do is I could just up my levels of viewport here. So I'm in my modifiers, properties. I'm on my subdivision surface modifier. If I hide this right now, if I turn this off, you can see that, you know, this is still what our tree looks like underneath. I can up the levels of subdivision a little bit further. But I'm actually not going to do that because there's one other thing I want to show you. So step 1 is let's just apply this. I'm going to hit this little arrow drop down and I'm going to apply the subdivision surface modifier. So this is making the mesh actually what we're seeing it. Apply. So then the modifier went away, and now if I hit, oops, not on there. If I go tab in edit mode, we can see that all of these vertices are actually here. Okay, but there's still one additional, so, and I'll say this. I could sculpt right now. So I could right click, I'm in object mode, I could right click, I could shade smooth, then I could go to my sculpting thing here and I could start, you know, sculpting, giving the tree a little life and things like that. But let me undo before I do too much damage. Re-topology. Let's go back. I'm gonna go back to my modeling. I'm gonna go Z, and I want material preview, just because I feel like the lighting and the shading is a little nicer here. Let's look at our modifiers again. There is a modifier here called remesh. Generate new mesh topology based on the current shape. So if I click on this, now warning, be careful when you fiddle around with these values in here, because if you crank up the wrong number, it's going to really chunk your computer. So save, do a save, Control S. But what remesh does is it basically changes the whole mesh of your model to smaller, more manageable pieces. Now, none of these are perfect. In fact, there are several paid third-party plugins that also do re-topology or remeshing. And it just like, it looks at the outside of your mesh as it exists, and it like converts it into like smaller, more manageable polygons. So remesh is the one that's here in Blender. If you are interested in this and you want to go look up more things that you can pay for, there's other plugins that you can find. You're more than welcome to. but this is what we're going to do now. Okay, and hold on. I just want to, before I'm not ready to undo my subdivision, because I feel like I just want to adjust this tree branch a little bit more. I'm being too much. I'm being picky about this. Some of my like branching things here are bugging me. So 2 for edge select. I'll only do one more. 2. I'm just like this one, this one, this one, this one. I'm gonna Shift E. Suck that in a little bit. Just maybe not quite that much. Yeah, like this. And I'll select this one and I'll, oops, this one. Shift E and I'll move it back a little. And then maybe I'll take this one and I'll kind of G move it in, and maybe I'll grab these ones and kind of just do that and rotate a little bit. I don't know. Is that one okay? Was there another one that was bugging me? Also, just like the general roundness of these is bothering me a little bit, but no, I'm going to leave it. Okay. Apply this. Whoops. Object mode. Apply that. We're looking at remesh. Okay. So by default here, looking at this, you can see that it's like it's like pixeling the edges of these. So if you're there's several different options here. Voxel, sharp, smooth blocks. So if you're a Minecraft player, you might be like, ooh, like blocks. Like, ooh, I like blocks. Octree depth. So again, like be careful as you're changing these values. So blocks probably isn't going to be something that we're going to want to do. Smooth maybe is something to look at. You can change the depth of some of these. Like be careful. 7, 8 is maybe getting a little dangerous. Sharp. Play with these a little bit. The scale also, like some of these voxel size. Like don't go too crazy. And voxel might not work for what we're doing. If you crank this down, your computer's going to crash, guarantee. So I think smooth maybe is going to work for us. So you can see that there is quite a bit of detail in here now. There's lots of polygons and like lots of opportunity for sculpting. Okay, so I've got remesh on here. You can change the threshold too, maybe. But again, don't, and then maybe turn on smooth shading if you want. And then apply it once you feel satisfied. So again, like this is a starting place here. I'm also gonna just right click shade smooth like this. And now we can sculpt. So from here, this is all just about character and style. Like, I don't know. Let's go to sculpting here. So don't forget, like F is your brush size. So if you hit the F key, you can change that, and then left click to kind of apply that. So like I'm just gonna maybe I'm just gonna like chunk out the bottom a little bit. Maybe I want my bottom to be like just a little bigger. So I'm just gonna kind of suck all these out a little bit. And like I'm just using this draw one. I'm sure there's other ones. Maybe I'll use smooth, but like again, like sculpting is not one of my strengths, I'll say. But to each your own. You're welcome to use any tools that you see fit. But I'm just kind of messing with it now to make it look a little bit more natural. Also, like I can see that my remesh has kind of done me dirty a little bit here. I can kind of see some of these where my edges were, but it's not too bad because like there are, tree bark does kind of do this. But maybe I can do like smooth here. I'll use the smooth tool and kind of smooth this out first, just to kind of get rid of some of those really noticeable parts. Oops, undo. That felt like it made it really small. So I'm just going to kind of smooth it out here. You'll get in a little closer. Kind of smooth this a little bit, maybe. And then I'll go back to my draw. What is the shortcut for this one? Shift spacebar X. I'll just click it. And then maybe I'll up my strength a little bit and F, turn my radius down a little bit. And I can like really start to add like some, I don't know, tree bark. I don't want my strength to be that high. And maybe I'll have it like kind of twist around the tree like this. And then like maybe I'll have it kind of like start all the way up here and kind of travel down. You can see where it like sucks nutrients out of the earth. It's a spooky tree. So again, like this is just like the style that I'm doing with mine. Maybe you want to have more detail, or maybe you want yours to be smoother. No, I shouldn't have gone that way. I'm like not undoing. Maybe I should undo a little bit. So like maybe this one would actually kind of wrap around on this side. I'm just trying to give it a little bit more realistic textures. So, you know, do this to your heart's intent. And so you're starting to see that, like, even though we added a bunch of detail, it's still not perfect. So like maybe we could have had, so what's our polygon count at now? Statistics. Okay, so let's go back. Yeah. Oh, well, we're at, is that real? Faces, 34,000. That's kind of a lot, actually. It all depends on how close people are looking at it. And like, you know, you don't have to do, like, play with some of these other tools, elastic deform. So like, grab might be a good one for like some of these trees to make them like kind of jagged. I'm gonna like just, you know, make these look all withered and weird. Oh yeah, okay. This is maybe what we were trying to do here, is make it like a really kind of yeah. Grabbing some of these other, making it look real twisted, make this bigger, and like I could even just grab this, make this go over here. Okay. Now it's starting to look spooky. I was worried that you were going to be judging me like, Nolan, that's not that spooky. But the sculpting is where we can really shine here. Don't want it to be like too weird. We want it to be like sort of realistic. Oh yeah. It was feeling too like straight. But now we're getting there. Oh, okay. It's looking spooky. All right, let's go back to sculpting a little bit. Let's do some smaller details. I'm turning the strength down a little bit. So let's just adding some flavor here. Just adding some interesting stuff. Don't forget the tops. And also, like, if there's a specific angle that you've already determined, or you have a specific place for how this is being used, then don't worry about the back too much. Okay. All right, I won't do too much more. It's looking good to me. I want to get this like twist. I think we need a little bit more here. I'm just clicking and dragging with my mouse. Yeah, let's get a little bit more on this branch here. This looks like it needs a little more excitement. If sculpting seems interesting and cool to you, check out ZBrush. Well, we do look at ZBrush in the 3D modeling, the advanced 3D class for in the fall semester. So come and check that out in the fall if you want. Okay, cool. I think that's sufficiently spooky. I think I'm good here. Let's go to our material preview. I'm gonna move my ground up a little bit. GZ. Whoops. G. Oh, I need it. Let's go back to modeling. Here we go. Tab, object mode. GZ. I'll move this down a little bit so it's in the ground. And maybe what I should. Okay. We need just like a little bit more root sticking out. Sculpting. Oh, oops! I got my hook tool. Let me do add. What does this one do? Clay? No, maybe you want to do clay. No. Undo. Draw. I want to just like have like a couple up my strength. I'm gonna have like a couple of like just roots sticking out down here at the bottom as it goes into the ground. Yeah, okay. There we go. Just so it's not like perfectly round as it goes into the ground. Okay, just a little bit more. Sometimes I just like can't say it's good. So that's, you know, that's how I would do this. And maybe, you know, maybe I spend more time on my textures and my materials and things like that, but this is the way to start. And like, again, this, I would say that my example is a little bit of a simpler example. Obviously it's just a tree with like twisty limbs. So you're welcome to take this a much further. I'm going to switch back to the Eevee renderer just for this. Okay, let's talk about particles. So this is a bonus skill, and I'll show you how you can incorporate it into your tree here. So particles. There's two kinds of particles. There's hair particles and dynamic particles in Blender. So hair particles are like just having things that grow off of an object, like hair. And then dynamic particles are like things that move. So like sparks or smoke or fire or water. There's those kinds of particles. So we're gonna talk about hair particles. So I've got my spooky tree here. I'm gonna like just rename this spooky tree. We have a tab along here that's called particle properties. And so, you know, with spooky tree selected, let's go to particle properties tab here, and let's hit the plus button. We'll add a new particle property. Dynamic was the wrong word. There's emission particles. I guess it's called dynamic and other things, but there's emission particles and hair particles, and we're talking about here. So when we added a particle system to spooky tree, we're on the particle properties tab. I hit the plus button here to add a new particle system. We want this to be hair, so click the hair tab here, and you can see our tree is covered in hair. Great. So I believe actually if you, oh no, we don't have physics in here, so that's fine. You can stay in modeling. Where even was I? Object mode, here we go. So it's covered in hair. So obviously, you know, we don't want hair on it, but we want to have like branches or something else. So we can signal that we want another object to act as the hair. So what we can do is like I can shift A. I can add a new cone into the scene here, and you know, keep it simple. You know, vertices, you know, 12 is probably fine there. And I can G move this over here. So we've got our cone. We can even call this like cone particle. Particle? Article. And then we can go back to our spooky tree. And let's look at some of our properties. So we have emission. So this shows us like we can signal how many hairs we want. You can change the seed, so that just changes the randomness of it. The length, the segments, which we can look at later. But let's look at render. And we can, right now it's rendering as path, but we can change this. We can change this to an object. So if you select render as, hit the drop down object, and then we just need to tell it which object we want. So there's a new little drop down here within render here. There's object, instance object. So we can just hit the eyedropper and just select the cone particle, or you can like type it in here or select it. I like the eyedropper, cone particle. And so now we have a bunch of cone particles growing out of our tree. So again, like you can change the number. Now there's 700. Now there's 1. You can change the randomness of it by changing the seed number. You can change the size of it by changing the hair length. And segments doesn't actually do anything when we use an object. So there's a couple of things we can change here. Object. So when it references this cone, you can have it reference some of these things. So like object scale. So if I change this scale, it will change it on there because we have it signaled to. So every time you kind of click off of your tree, you have to go back to the tree and then go back to your particle properties tab. But like if I turn off object scale, scaling this won't change that again. Object rotation, same story. So like right now, like if I rotate it, you can see it's rotating all of the particles over here. But again, I can just turn that off and it won't do anything. Global coordinates is actually kind of cool. Like it'll follow the cone around. Not necessarily useful for what we're doing, but it's kind of another cool effect. By default, we can. I mean, you can fiddle with some of these other things, but that's the important thing. Underneath, at the very top here of this particle system, there's this advanced checkbox. So this one, let's click that, and it actually gives us a few extra options. Velocity and rotation and physics mainly. But rotation is absolutely something that you'll need to play with. Even so, it's not really an advanced property. So if you enable rotation here, you can signal. So right now, if you look very closely, you can see that all of these cones are like laying on their side. Because the orientation axis, has been calculated as such. So we can change the orientation axis to one of many things here, but what probably makes the most sense is normal, or normal tangent. Object X, object Z, velocity hair. So actually, none of these actually. So like, for me, if I want to have all the cones pointing straight out, I probably want to do one of these, normal or normal tangent, and then what I'd have to do is I'd have to go down to object, render object, and then change my object rotation like this, and then rotate it so that they're facing out like this. So that would be like RY 90. There we go. And so now they're all sticking out. Now, the other thing to be aware of, so it places it on the object based on the origin point. So like, look at this one, for example. This one is not like sitting on the edge of the tree. It's like sticking right through it. And we haven't talked about origin points, but we will spend more time on what an origin point is and doing things precisely. But what you need to know for now is the origin point of an object is this little orange dot. So it's putting this orange dot on the edge of the tree. So when you move an object around in object mode, the origin point moves with it. But if you are in edit mode and I hit tab and I have all these faces selected and I G, you can see that that little orange dot, I'm pointing at my screen, that little orange dot stays in the exact same spot, and everything else moves around. And you can hopefully see, let me right click to undo that. If we look at the tree while I do that, you can see that things move away from the tree because I'm moving the cone away from its origin point. That's something to be careful. So like you can see that my origin point is right here, and like the rest of the mesh is way over here. So everything is floating over the tree. And so then like if I rotate here, if I go back into object mode with tab, if I rotate, it's rotating around the origin point. Whoa. So, this is an opportunity for some really cool animation, I guess. But if you're trying to be precise with particles, that's the deal. So I'm going to undo. What I am going to do is I'm going to go orthographic 1 like this. And I am going to take, so my origin point's right here. I am going to take all these faces. So I've got 3 for face select. I hit A to select all the faces. I can G, what direction is that? X, and move it this way. So like the bottom of it is close to the origin point. And now you can see that like on our tree here, my particles are sitting kind of on the edge. If your origin point gets super thrown off, if you're in object mode, you can go up to your object menu here and do set origin and choose one of these. Geometry to origin, so it'll move all of your geometry back to where the origin is, or origin to geometry, which would be the other way around. And it'll put it, back kind of in the middle. It'll calculate the middle. So if I do geometry to origin like this, you can see it moved it just a little bit. Okay. So if we were to use particles to make like little branches with leaves on them, we obviously wouldn't want there to be branches like on the trunk. We'd only want them to be up higher. So we use something called weight paint. And again, so if you're feeling like already overwhelmed with particles, that's okay. Because this is a bonus thing. This is not a required thing. I just want to like show you some of the cool things we can do. The important thing here is just like getting comfortable with modeling your tree, doing a little bit of sculpting. The particles is bonus. So how do we get just particles on the top? How do we get our spiky cones just on the top? Weight paint. So we're in object mode. We can go to weight paint mode like this. Weight paint. Oh, and I had my cone selected, so undo. I want my spooky tree selected. And then I'm going to go back to weight paint. I need to make sure I'm in object mode and I select the spooky tree like this. Then I go to weight paint. There we go. Okay, and you know what? Why don't I hide my particles? So to hide the particles and I'm in my particle properties here, I can hit this little monitor icon and it'll turn them off. So it's blue. The color is important. Blue represents 0%. If I have my weight paint draw tool here, if I paint on here on part of this tree, it becomes red. Red is 100%. So right now, I have painted a value. And so remember what I said a couple weeks ago. I'll paint the backside of this too. Percentages are determined by a value between 0 and 1. So blue is a value of 0, meaning 0%. Red here means value of 1 or 100%. And so like I'm painting with a strength of 1. So if I paint with a strength of 0.5, that is 50%. And if I paint on this branch, it's green. So you can see that like there's a little bit of a rainbow. I'm going to make this a little smaller. There's a little bit of a rainbow that happens here. And if I paint with double 50%, you know, it goes up higher. So like, looking here, red is 100%. Then there's like a little bit of fall off. It gets orange, yellow, green, and then blue, light blue, dark blue, teal, I guess. So this is like a gradual fall off from 100% to 0%. So what do these percentages even mean? This is the strength of the air. Well, we're painting on the areas we want particles. So there's a heavier weight. This is why it's called weight painting. We're painting where we want more weight of particles, and the blue is where there's less weight of particles. So we'll start with just this for now. And what this has done is it's created, it's assigned these values to the vertexes on here. So if I go tab and edit mode, it's giving all of these vertices in here a value of 1. It's giving all of these vertices here like a value of 0.5, and all these other vertices are a value of 0. It's a vertex group. It's a group of vertexes. So we know that there are groups of vertexes with weight paint on the spooky tree because we have this icon here. It's this one that's like a little honeycomb with squares. So we can go down here to object data properties on our spooky tree. And right here at the top, actually, we have vertex groups. So it's created one that's called group, but we can rename this because this first one that it just created is we can call this our particle weight. So again, this is like a little bit advanced. So keep up if you're interested, but otherwise tune out. Particle weight in our vertex groups here under object data properties, vertex groups, particle weight. There it is. Okay. So now we can go back to our particle properties and close some of these, close velocity, rotation, render, all that stuff. Down here we have vertex groups. And we can assign one of our vertex groups to one of these things. So density is probably, hopefully you can understand that the density of the particles we want to assign to a vertex group. And we can click on particle weight, the group we chose. And now let's turn this back on. And we have particles on on our branches, just where we painted. So you can see where it was red here. There's more particles, and where it was green here, there's less particles. So actually, we can change my emission a little bit. Bring this number down. And so I can continue to like just paint right on here, and you can see that it's like adding them in. This is actually kind of fun because I can do this on the fly. I'll do it on the back side too. I'm just painting on the weight paint. I don't know. Maybe your tree is totally dead. Okay, I won't spend too much time on this. Okay, but Nolan, how do we actually like get branches on here? Well, you just have to model a branch now. So let's do it. Tab to get object mode. So we had this thing before, but let's just model a quick branch. So I actually will start with the cylinder, but I want a very like basic one. I want to do like 8 sides like this. And I want my depth. I want my depth to be 1 meter, and I want my radius to be like teeny tiny, like 0.04. Okay, cool. So the other thing with particles is like if you're multiplying something hundreds of times, you don't want it to be very detailed. Because like if you have 1,000 polygons on one thing, on like one tree branch that you're going to add here, and then you multiply that 200 times, that's 200,000 polygons, which is too many. So I'm going to start with just a little stick. And I'll like extrude out like this, and just like G, rotate that a little bit. Maybe you know what? I'm not going to start with a cylinder. I'm going to start even simpler. Undo. I'm going to start with a cube. I'm going to move it over here, scale it down. I'm going to like tab to edit mode. I'm going to extrude out the bottom. I'm going to take 2 for edge select. Oh, I'm going to turn on this button here. Hopefully, maybe you can predict what I'm going to do. Auto merge vertices. I'm going to take this edge. I'm going to GG. I'm going to slide it down here like this. And now I have just a triangle on top. And then I'm going to take this 3 for face select. I'm going to select this face. I'm going to extrude out this way. S scale it down. Here I'm going to extrude this way. S scale that down too. I'm just trying to make like a little like twig branch situation. I'll extrude one more time. And maybe this is totally going to backfire, and maybe this actually ends up looking bad, but we'll see. I'm just kind of playing. I'm just winging it a little bit. Sometimes the best way to like learn how to do something is just experiment with it. See what works, see what doesn't work. I'm going to use my shrink fatten a little bit. I'm going to take these 4 and what is it? Alt S? Shrink. I'm going to shrink them a little bit like that. It just kind of like sucks them together. It's different from scaling. Okay. Good. Let's add, I'm going to add just like 2 leaves on here. So to add, I'm going to, without going back into object mode, I want to add a plane into this object. So while I'm still in edit mode for this object, I can Shift A and add a plane like this. And I need to kind of get it into place here using my orthographic views. And here I am just going to use the knife tool. I'm going to be like super basic. I'm going to go 7 for my top down. And where's my knife tool? Here it is. I'm just going to like cut out a little leaf just like this. Tink. And then, I don't know, kind of, maybe it's like this. How do you make a maple leaf? This is going to be like, does this even look like a leaf? What am I doing? Who am I? Am I qualified to teach this class? Oh, it's terrible. Spacebar to apply. Great. It looks, don't judge me. Okay. 3 for face select, W for my selection tool. I want to just get rid of this face. Can I? Delete faces. Cool. Now I'm just left with the leaf. There it is. Okay. RX. Scale it down. There's my leaf. You can definitely spend more time on this if you want. And then I'm going to Shift D, move another one over here, and like just, I'll rotate it this way a little bit, and G, put it down here. Is it on? Sure. Okay. It's a twig with 2 leaves. So spend more time on this if you want. You can also make multiple versions and like have, different things going on. I'm going to call this twig particle. Okay. And now it's as simple as going back onto Spooky Tree. Oops, going back into object mode, selecting my Spooky Tree, and going to my particle properties, going down to render, changing the object. Right now it's cone particle. Get rid of that. Get the eyedropper and just select your twig particle. Cool. Done. No, just kidding. We can change the hair length to bring the scale down. We can scale randomness like this. You can have some larger, some smaller. You can actually change the scale here as well. The other thing too is we need to look at the origin point, because I want the base of this to be, on the tree. So going back here, you can see that, yep, the origin point is here. It's this orange thing. So I just need to adjust my origin point. So tab A to select all. I'm going to get into my orthographic view. And G, I'm going to move it up to the bottom there. As close as we can. Get to my side view if I can. Yep, so that looks good. 1, 2, cool. So now hopefully it should be sticking out of the tree. Oh, and so the other thing too is our rotation is off a little bit. So this is another thing that kind of bugs me about Blender is the rotation. Like if I do normal or normal tangent, it's still, oh, normal tangent still isn't working. So we just need to, let's go back to normal. We'll go tab into edit mode. I'll go for, whoops. I want to use an orthographic view. And I'm going to R rotate like this. And then G, I have to move it back to where my origin point is there. Did it do it? Did I rotate it the wrong way? Yes, we have to go the other direction. So 180 like this. Here. And then G, move it back like this. And now they're all sticking out. And they're just coming out of the branches. So what you could do is you could maybe create 3 different particles and have them be like different shapes and sizes, so it's not all random. Maybe you put a few more leaves on here. Or maybe you only do leaves and you model out more branches. So this is kind of a lazy way to do it. You can randomize the phase a little bit just so it's like sticking out. Scale randomness, I don't know. Again, like, so this is, and then you can hide, we can delete our cone particle, and you can hide the twig particle too. So this is just like an intro to particles, but just so you can understand how it kind of works and how weight paint works. Now, one thing to note about weight paint, you're like, oh, well, why don't I add a big plane down here, and I want to make like some grass particles that come out of here, and I want to do some weight paint on my plane here. So I'll go, let me get out the weight paint on the plane, and you try to start painting, and it's like, oh, it's not doing anything. It's because weight paint is creating vertex groups. So one thing about a plane is that there are no vertexes in the middle of a plane. There's vertexes on the edge here. So like there's one on the corner here. There's one on the corner here. And here and here. But there's nothing in the middle. So you would need to tab, edit, and like subdivide, or like, number of cuts. Do like this. Because you need vertexes. Do 9, 10 cuts like this. And now if you were to go weight paint, you could actually paint on the vertexes like this. And make some grass. Maybe like have a patch of grass that's like right in front of it and it's cute and whatever. So that's another thing you could do with your spooky tree. You could particle some grass if you wanted. Okay. Enough of that. So don't forget to keep working on assignment 3. Next week, week 7, when we Zoom, we will do a progress check on Spooky Tree, assignment 3. Just like a general philosophy thing for everybody. These first several assignments are not necessarily about creating a portfolio worthy piece. These first definitely 4 assignments are just about learning how it works. So the assignments are your way to practice, some guided practice. And that doesn't mean you can't practice more on your own, but if you're worried that like, oh, it's not good enough, like, oh, like I'm going to get a bad grade. You're not going to get a bad grade, and you are going to learn by doing. So I don't want you to feel any pressure of it to like look a certain way. The pressure should just be to practice and get better. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you've got for your spooky trees. Please email me with questions. Otherwise, we will speak next week. So long. Goodbye.